Toss aside the touchy-feely notions of love in business and recognize the real power it holds. Welcome to the Love is Just Damn Good Business podcast with host Steve Farber. Drawing on his work with a wide variety of companies from the Fortune 100 to smaller family-owned businesses, Farber shares inspiring interviews with business leaders and proven strategies for how you can create experiences that your customers will love by developing a culture that your employees, teammates, and colleagues love working in. Discover why and how love, at the end of the day, is just damn good business for you too. Here's your host, Steve Farber.
Hi, this is Steve Farber, and welcome to episode number 8 of the Love is Just Damn Good Business podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Episode number 8. I mean, we're still babies around here, and I have to say I am really enjoying this podcast process, if process is the right word. Maybe it's process, depends on where you live. Anyway, I hope you've been enjoying this as well. My guest today is Ethan Agarwal, who is the founder and CEO of a company called Aaptiv. Aaptiv is a premium digital health and wellness content app. They are an audio fitness app and one of the most successful out there. They were launched in 2016. They've raised over $50 million so far in venture funding and have over 200,000 paying subscribers. So just ponder for a moment how great an accomplishment that is. How many apps get launched every minute, it seems, and how lucky some of them are to get even a couple of hundred subscribers. So they were over 200,000. And I really enjoyed my conversation with him because I was curious. You know, here he's got this really innovative, new company. And I was wondering if there were some parallel in the way that he built this company, in the way that he built the culture of this company, if indeed he paid any attention at all to the culture of the company while he was launching this app, if there was any parallel to what they do and to this idea that love is just damn good business. And surprise, surprise, the parallels are pretty strong. He's a really perceptive guy, and I know you're going to enjoy hearing what he has to say as to how he built the company and what he had to pay attention to in terms of the dynamics of the culture that he was building. I'll give you a little foreshadowing. He basically said, take care of the team and everything else will take care of itself. Obviously, it's a little more complicated than that, but that's the perspective he comes from. He has a storied background. He came out of McKinsey. He was educated at Johns Hopkins, got his MBA at Wharton. He was raised in an entrepreneurial family. You'll hear all about his dad and the influence that his entrepreneur father had on him growing up and as a young business guy. Just a really terrific conversation. I know you're going to enjoy it. So here he is, Ethan Agarwal, founder of Aaptiv. Enjoy.
Aaptiv is a digital content company. We create health and wellness content. And what that looks like is we have trainers who build workout classes for 22 different categories of workouts. So everything from running to strength training, meditation, elliptical, cycling, boxing, largely any workout you can think of. We have content that will guide you through what that workout should look like. So there's a couple of distinguishing factors in the way that we approach it. Number one is all of our content is audio only. So we don't do any video. And the reason for that is, so I can tell you my background later, but when I started the company, I was looking for a solution for myself, and I'm a runner and I run outdoors. And there was a lot of digital content in the health and wellness space, but all of it was video based. And the problem with video is, as a runner, I can't run down the street, staring at my phone or staring at an iPad, right? That doesn't make any sense. And running actually happens to be the most popular workout in the country. It's not even close. There's 40 million Americans who run. So any video-based product is precluding themselves from that market. And so we realized that audio was a much better delivery mechanism for the content. And it's actually much more flexible and effective for almost every workout that you can imagine. So that's our first distinction. The second one is that we focus much more on the sort of cycle of the member, we're trying to build a product that is with you for your entire life. And the way that we do that is through the breadth of the content. So I told you that we have 22 categories, but more importantly than that, we have programs that help you achieve specific goals. So again, when I looked at the market and I saw, there's often sort of these boutique fitness classes that are quite high end and expensive. There's different personal training solutions. There's hardware you can buy at home. Those tend to be more a la carte offerings, right? So it's like you take a class and then what? You take another class, but the studio doesn't know anything about you, anything about your journey, anything about your goals. You sort of just keep taking the same classes over and over again. We focus very much on programs. So for example, we have a 10-month, 3-trimester maternity program. And each week of the 40 weeks, we say, here's what you can do. You should hypothetically strength training on this day, yoga the next day, pelvic exercises the next day, deep breathing, throughout the first week. And then as the woman progresses through her pregnancy, obviously what she can do in week 38 is very different. So we build a program that helps her. And then our maternity program is actually a 4-trimester program because we then have a after delivery, what do you do for the first trimester? So, it ends up being about a 15-month long program that guides you through all the different things you can do. So there's cardio, there's strength, there's stretching. It's a comprehensive surround sound experience. It's really answering the question of like, what do I do next? As opposed to just taking a class and then forgetting about the person. So that's our second differentiator. And then the third biggest differentiator is, and really this is sort of the cherry on top, is the price point. So, in a world, one of the things that I found really frustrating or I was kind of upset about is when I think about the innovation that's happened in the health and wellness category over the last, call it 15 years, it's really lived at the very top of the market. So it's, $40 group fitness classes or $150 an hour for a trainer or $2,000 for a spin bike. Most people in the country or in the world can't afford anything close to that. And you typically have to live in a big city to enjoy these things. That's not okay, right? So if you think of the various different things that we all consume of people at different income levels and all that, it's generally okay. Some people like really fancy clothes. Some people don't really care. Some people like nice meals. Some people don't really care. But when it comes to health, it's not right that someone who has more money or lives in a bigger city has better access to guidance and training and information about their health and their fitness than someone who may not make as much money or live in a smaller city. That doesn't feel right to me. So I wanted to create a product that would help people across income levels, across demographic levels. And so we only charge $99 a year for unlimited on-demand access to our entire content library. And that number is important because it's within 1% of the disposable income of 90% of Americans. It truly is accessible to everyone. So, like I'm saying, the price is sort of the cherry on top. The first two things, which is the better delivery mechanism and the breadth of the content and the program experience, that's what makes it a great product. So regardless of the price, and then the price just ends up being something that's nice to have. But it allows us to reach a much broader audience.
And it's delivered in the form of an app, I'm assuming?
That's right. So we have an iOS app for iPhones, we have an Android app, and we have an Apple Watch app.
Okay. So basically it's headphones.
Yeah, you're listening to...
All you need is your phone and a pair of headphones.
Exactly. And you can take... So, we have outdoor running classes. So you listen to our trainers who will guide you through a run. They'll say, they'll tell you interval training, for example, we're going to jog for 30 seconds, then we're going to sprint for a minute, and then we're going to do steady pace for 2 minutes. And they'll time it and they'll guide you through it. They'll also provide motivation to keep you energized and keep you going through the harder parts of the run. And then the last and very important part of it is the music. So we have direct licensing deals with Sony Music and Warner, 2 of the 3 big major labels, to have access to all of their content. And so we do a lot of work, and our trainers do a lot of work in matching the pace of the workout with the pace of the music. So you're actually really enjoying yourself when you're working out instead of seeing it as sort of a burden.
Wow, that's great. And how old is the company now?
So the company is about 2.5 years old. I launched it in January of 2016. So I guess maybe coming up on about 3 years. We're based in New York City. We have 100 people here in the office. We're on the 49th floor of the World Trade Center. And in 2016, we had about 2,000 paying subs. When we started 2017, we had 61,000. At the beginning of 2018, we had 156,000. And by the end of this year, we should have a little over 250,000 paying members. So we've had good growth in the time.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So take me back a little bit to the very beginning, and tell me a little bit about your background and what led you up to this idea, and then tell me a little bit about the launch. Back in the launch days.
Sure. I grew up in the Bay Area, and my dad is actually an entrepreneur. So he started a software company in 94, and he took it public on NASDAQ in 01, and then sold it in 2003. And since then has started 2 other companies. So he's very entrepreneurial. And so that, spirit is sort of in me. And I always knew I wanted to start a company. But what I chose to do was to spend the first decade or so of my career understanding the way that businesses are built and run before starting my own. Because, growing up in the Bay Area, and I'm sure you know lots of people who, they have an idea for maybe a product and maybe they raise some money and they hire a couple people, but they don't necessarily know how to turn that into a company or into a business, how to monetize it. And I didn't want to fall victim to that. So I started my career in finance. I went to investment banking out of undergrad. I went to Johns Hopkins for my undergrad. I did a double in economics, political science, a minor in business. I graduated a year early, went to investment banking for a couple of years, and then I went to Wharton to get my MBA. I came out of Wharton and went to a hedge fund for some time, and then I went to McKinsey for 3 years before starting the company. And so the way that I think about it is I spent roughly 5 years on the quantitative valuation P&L side of it between investment banking and the hedge fund. And then I spent about 5 years on the more qualitative, strategic team building side of it between McKinsey and Wharton. So, you combine those 2 parts of it and then started this company, like I said, at the beginning of 2016.
Mm-hmm. Where did the idea come from for the initial product?
So in grad school, I put on a lot of weight. I put on like 40 pounds and wanted to lose it. And, as a consultant, I'm on the road 4 days a week. And I don't know if you've ever tried this, but trying to hire a trainer in a city you're traveling to is very, very challenging. It's very challenging if it's tier 1 city. If it's a tier 2 or tier 3 city, forget about it. Right. And so that was frustrating. And then I was thinking, even when I'm in New York, if I want training, I can go to, Barry's boot camp, or I can hire a trainer, and there's a bunch of options. But all of them came with what I would consider logistical restrictions, in the sense that you have to book it ahead of time, classes sell out, you're penalized for not showing up. There's all this drama associated with it that I didn't want to have to deal with.
Yeah, I've been doing Orange Theory lately. So
okay. So their workouts are great. It's just that you have to go to a specific place, you have to book a class, etc.
Yeah.
So I wanted to remove that drama, which was the second challenge. But then I realized that the opportunity was actually much bigger than that, because I was fortunate enough where A, I live in New York, and B, I can afford all these options, right? That's not true for most people in the world. Most people can't spend that much money to work out. Most people don't live, in a major city like Manhattan with all these options. If you live in a small town somewhere, it doesn't actually matter how much money you make, because the best trainers probably don't live there. The best trainers live in the largest cities. Or the flip side is you can live in LA, San Francisco, New York, but if you make, not a lot of money, it doesn't really matter if there's a bunch of fancy studios on your block, because you can't afford to go. Right. And so because of financial or geographic limitations, what had happened is that the perception of training had become such that it was like this really fancy elite, pro athletes or like uber wealthy or celebrities. It was just for them. And again, when it comes to people's health, that doesn't feel right to me. It shouldn't be based on how rich you are or where you live. And so I realized that there was an opportunity there to bring really great training and content and guidance to a much larger audience.
What I'm hearing you say, because you've said it a couple of times now in a couple of different ways, but there are 2 things that are happening simultaneously. One is is the recognition of this market niche, demand for training, but it being really expensive, right? So that's the analytical analysis of the market. But then there's that sentiment that says it's just not right, that you have to be wealthy.
And it's a rare occasion when you can find something where both those things are true, right? So the funny thing is that it's not a niche. So in America, 56 million people have a gym membership. 40 million people run outside. These are massive populations that are entirely unserved because the average gym goer is spending $20 a month, right? And
and then not going.
Well, so they may not be going, but the point is that you probably and I certainly, we operate in a world of like $150 a month gym memberships and $100 yoga pants and this and that, and we forget that there's a much larger market of people that want to work out. At least half of them are going to the gym, but they're average on spending $20 a month when they go.
Right.
So that market was totally underserved because no one was creating product of high caliber, but also of a price point that was accessible. So yes, to your point, the analytical component said to me that there's clearly a market opportunity. But the reason that I got really excited about it is because of the second point, which is that it was just like a moral opportunity.
And where did that psychoanalyze you or anything? But where did that come from for you?
Desire for the moral opportunity?
Well, just that, there's something about the personal radar that notices that, right? That recognizes that moral deficiency.
Yeah. I mean, I think, as a kid, I traveled a lot. So I'm Indian, and both my parents are Indian, and my dad, before starting the company, was a professor at McGill. And so we used to travel all the time. And you go around the world even today, but if you go around the world in the late 80s, early 90s, which is when I was a kid, you see all kinds of things. You see poverty that you don't run into on a daily basis in the US. And you develop an empathy, I think, which sticks with you throughout your adulthood. And, even when I started making some money in my first couple of jobs, like, investment banking, it's not a lot of money, but it's more money than a 21-year-old should make. So like I would donate 10% of my salary to charity every year because like it just felt like it's more than I need and someone else can do more with this than I can. And so when I saw an opportunity around health and wellness, I lost those 35, 40 pounds that I gained by, I lived in a nice building in Chelsea and I went to this fancy gym and all this kind of stuff. And I said, it's not right that only because I have these resources that I'm able to do this. Getting healthy and losing weight or whatever you want to do by getting healthy is not something that's for a specific demographic. That just didn't register with me.
Yeah.
And then you combine it with, like you said, the analytical part of it. And it felt like a no-brainer, honestly.
Cool. So I want to shift the focus a little bit and tell me about the company.
Okay.
And your team and the people and what, if any, desire did you have when you started the company for the kind of culture that you wanted to?
So I'm going to bring my dad up one more time because when I started the company, I obviously asked for his advice and he continues to give it to me. And the biggest thing that he said, or rather the most important thing he said to me was, take care of your team and everything else will sort itself out. And he preaches that every day. And I think that's why he's been so successful in the companies that he's built is that, and, obviously people love to work with him again in his new ventures, et cetera, because that's a philosophy that he's followed from day one.
What's your dad's name, by the way?
His name is Vinod, Vinod, same last name. So anyway, so that, first of all, that was the sort of anchor for everything that I do here, which is take care of the team. Everything else will sort itself out. So that's, I think, most important. Second is the way that I like to think of my role here in a variety, there's a couple ways to think about it. But number one is I have always been the lowest paid person on my exec team by far. I either take no salary or I take a very, very nominal salary relative to actually a lot of the people at the company, but certainly everyone on the exec team. And that's been the case since the company started, and that will continue to be the case, that I will always take less. And that's very important to me because I'm here and I'm asking everyone to, to a certain degree, invest in me, invest in themselves, believe in the mission. And so it's not right for me to sort of siphon off capital from this company while we're trying to build it. And you know what startups are like. There's lots of risk and lots of things that you have to figure out. So I try to reflect that by not compensating myself the most. The next thing I'll say is, as a result of my belief in the team and the importance of leaning on the team, the people that I hire around me, I also need them to believe that, because they are going to be managing, all the people that I don't interact with on a day-to-day basis. So it can't just be my level and then the folks below me. That has to permeate throughout the entire company. And so, my CTO and VP product is a guy named Chris Fisher. This is my first startup. This is his 8th startup.
Wow.
This is his 7th startup. So we average 4 startups between the two of us. But he's an incredible technologist, an incredible product guy, but he's a phenomenal people person. His team respects the hell out of him, and as they should, because he's really caring and he spends so much time with them and he nurtures them and their careers, and he develops them. And that was really important to me when I was recruiting for that role. Was, yes, I need someone with technical chops, etc., but I need someone who's going to look out for their team the way that I want to look out for my team. Mm-hmm. So now I've built out my entire leadership team, right? I have my CTO, my CFO. We just hired a COO. She's on her 2nd week now. But even her, Tracy Kim, she's Stanford undergrad, HBS, MBA. She spent a couple years in McKinsey. She's been sort of operator for the last 15 years at a variety of different companies. And she came here as a COO. And the number one thing if you ask anyone about her, is they'll say she's a great manager and a great leader, and not even talk about her professional background, which is incredible. So anyway, so that's the third thing, is that I look for people like that to hire their teams, because that's the kind of people that I want to work with. And then the very last thing, the last thing I'll say on this point right now is what our product does. I mean, we've talked about this, but our focus every day is on the members, is on the people that are using the product. We have crazy stories of how our members have used the product to change their lives. I just, an hour ago, was in a cab going to a meeting, and this woman on my team sent me a video of a member of ours who's in the Army. She's stationed in South Korea. She took a video on her phone in her Humvee and sent it to us. It's a 3-minute video. She found Aaptiv 2 years ago. She had a baby. She had a C-section and obviously had gained some weight and couldn't work out for a while because of the C-section. And she used Aaptiv to get back into shape so that she could rejoin the Army. It requires you to be in a certain physical shape. Stuff like, there's another guy, I was looking at a video this weekend. He was 400 pounds. He lost 200 pounds. He's now at 200 pounds. And the cool part of the story is not even that. It's that he says losing the 200 pounds put him in a completely different mental place. And so his business started doing better because he was willing to take more risks and he had more confidence and he launched in new territories. And that's the fun part. It's yeah, you look great because you lost 200 pounds, but it's the incremental benefit. So that focus on the member and the stories and the value we provide for them, those are the kinds of people that's what I focus on. Those are the kinds of people that I want to work with. So I always tell people who come work here, the members are the first people that we have to look out for. We have a lot of parties, right? We have investors, we have team members, we have our families, we have, your boss, you have all this and that, but we have to look after the members. And so people that care about the mission of the company, that's paramount for everyone who's going to work here.
So this is really great, because the construct of the book and the construct of actually all of my work really comes down to one, which is do what you love in the service of people who love what you do, right? If you look at those 3 things, you just addressed each one, right? So doing what you love is the personal part of it. You know that old saying, you do what you love and the money will fall on your head kind of a thing?
Sure.
It's nice, but it's not entirely true. So, because if that's all there were to it, it just isn't that way. So yes, you want to do what you love,
which kind of starts with your personal motivation, which is what you talked about seeing that need, seeing that gap, that kind of moral gap. In the service of people is the context for it, right? So it's not just about doing what you love. You want to use that to serve people, what you're doing with not only with the technology and the product and the offering and all of that, serving your members, but it's also the culture that you're creating in, as you said, people taking care of your team, but also hiring the kind of leaders that also want to take care of their team, right? So that's the service bit. But then the payoff is who love what you do, right? So if you were serving your members because you felt you had this great thing and it was really good for them, but they didn't love it, then you're not in business anymore, right?
Right.
So the videos represent that in a sense, kind of the last part of that equation. Do what you love in the service of people who love what you do. So these are the people that are raising their hands and saying, I love what you're doing for me, and here's why. And here's the impact that it's having on my life. So it's a beautiful illustration of it. So when you, just curious, when you, so it sounds like because of what you learned from your dad, you went into building your company with the conscious intent of creating a culture of caring, right? In other words,
I haven't articulated it like that before, but that's very fair.
Well, you said, the first thing, what I learned from my dad is the first thing is you got to take care of your team.
Yeah.
So I'm going to build a team where people know that I'm going to take care of them. Well, one of the ways I'm going to show that is by not taking a salary or getting paid less than them. That's a huge symbolic gesture, right? But then tell me a couple of points here at the same time. In my experience, most entrepreneurs, I would say, maybe that's an exaggeration, but I don't think so. Most entrepreneurs don't think about that at all. They get excited about their product. They get excited about the opportunity.
Yeah.
And then they go out and they find the talent that can help them execute on that. But they're not thinking about what kind of place do I want to create here, right? What kind of dynamics do I want among the team? What it's otherwise known as culture.
Yeah.
Every place has a culture.
That's right.
Just by virtue of stick a couple of people together, there's a culture.
Yeah.
But culture by design and culture on purpose and culture with intent. I just want you to know how great and unusual it is that you started your company with that in mind. Now, whether you think about it in those terms or not, that's what I'm hearing.
I appreciate that. I think I'd say a couple things. One is, so I'll give you another example. So early on, we were like 4 or 5 people, and I desperately needed a product manager to help with our mobile product. And we were a tiny company, no one had heard of us, and hiring product managers for mobile in New York City is extremely challenging. It's extremely challenging for any company, let alone a small no-name company from a first-time founder, et cetera, et cetera. So I got my hands on a guy who's incredible, and I don't want to tell you his name, but incredible background. He had sold a company before. He was working at a very large company now that you and I both know. And I somehow convinced him to come join us. And so right before, we sign offer letters, I have him come in and meet the other 3 people on my team because they were all going to be working so closely together. And one of the 3 people said to me after he left that she didn't like his personality, but I remember the line she said that she would be less excited to come into work every day knowing that he was there. And, now it's easy or easier because I have 100 people and we've done all this. But at the time, it was really tough because, to be totally honest with you, I needed that guy more than the role, at least, that other individual was providing. But she made a commitment to me and I made a commitment to her, and her being less excited to come into work, that's everything, right? As soon as you say that to me, that's it. So I rejected the guy. And it was a really, really tough decision at the time because I desperately needed that person. I put all this work into getting him, negotiating his salary, begging him to join my company. And then I said to him, like, sorry, man, it's not mine. Yeah, exactly. But, to be fair, then that woman stayed with us for 2.5 years because she understood, I think she saw the kind of company and culture that we wanted to build. So anyway, I wanted to give you another.
Yeah. So this is how I would characterize that based on what you told me already. You look for, what you said earlier is when you're looking to bring somebody onto the team, particularly the executive team, and I assume this is true for anything in the company, you're looking for that technical business expertise, and you're looking for the people side of the equation, right?
Yes.
So is that a fair characterization?
Yeah. And I think, to be totally fair, I think it's on a scale, it sort of depends on, the more senior you are, the more I care about the people side of it, the more sort of, IC level that you are. I still need you to be a good and genuine person, but I may be hiring you for a very specific skill set that you have. And if you have no one under you and you're in a very individual contributor role, then it's a little bit more towards the, skill set side.
Got it. Fair enough. So in the senior level team, then you look for the expertise and the people side of the equation. And then given the story you just told me about this other guy, the people side of the equation trumps the technical side.
In the long run, yes. I probably struggled with that a couple times. Measuring the people side versus the technical side, it's not like simple math, right? It's not this person's 40-60, that person's 30-70.
Right.
So in your mind, you don't even know honestly what that balance is. But I would argue, if you were to come in today and interview the 100 people on my team, I think you would get, 90% of them to say that we build out the team that's more on the people side than on the technical side.
Right.
I will say two things. Number one is, last week we got chosen as one of the top 100 best places to work in New York City.
In your size category?
No, it's not. That list is just 100 companies.
Wow.
There's very large companies on that list, and there's very, very small companies on that list.
Mm-hmm.
And the cool thing I like about that is it's done based on an employee survey.
Right.
So our employees filled it out, as did the employees of all the other companies. And the feedback was good because we got chosen as one of the top 100.
Yeah.
That's exciting. The second thing I'll say is, I think there's a misperception, not that you have this, but sometimes I talk to people and there's a misperception that culture means, if you focus on culture, you focus on people, it means that you're soft. And that may be true in certain cases, but in our case, that could not be further from the truth. We have a very high performance-driven culture. I demand a lot from my team. And if you don't cut it here, you're not going to cut it here. We don't have sort of patience for people who don't perform well. And so, but to your point, that is the culture, right? When people come here, they know that they're expected to work their butt off to perform very well. And the way that, look, I hate letting people go. It's one of the worst things. In fact, it is the worst thing I have to do in this job. The way that I always justify it to myself in my head is there's 99 other people plus their families who are relying upon the performance of this business. And if one person or two people are hindering the performance of the business, it hurts me to hurt those people, but otherwise I'm not being fair to the other 99 people and their families who are relying on me and the decisions we make. So that mindset of it being a very performance-driven culture is ingrained in everyone's head, and they expect that from me, as they should, and I expect that from them. So I bring this up because I think it's important to draw a distinction between people who think that culture means that you're wishy-washy and soft and all that, and you can't actually create a high-performing company.
Yeah, people who think that culture is wishy-washy and soft are describing a culture that's wishy-washy and soft.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
It's not inherent. It has nothing inherently to do with culture. So if you imagine, just kind of build on that for a second and imagine it from going out to the business world with a point of view that love is just damn good business, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the stereotype. Is the first place many people go, is love equals soft. That what you're saying is, what you should do is create an environment where everybody's happy all the time and nobody argues and people walk around with big goofy grins on their faces, and then every so often you stop the action and have a group hug in the hallway, and it's all about making people happy all the time. That's not love. I don't know what that is, but it's nauseating to me. And really, if it's really an environment that's based on love, which another way of saying might be, mutual care and concern and commitment to each other's hopes, needs, dreams, aspirations, those of our clients and all that, the standards are higher, not lower. Because if I love this place and I love our members and I love what we're trying to do here, I'm not going to tolerate substandard performance, behavior, attitude, and all that.
That's exactly right. Sorry, just the other thing I would say on this, you alluded to a little bit earlier, is in order to provide this product to millions of people around the world, we have to build a sustainable business model. We're not making money because we're money hungry capitalists and whatever. And we're also not capable of building a great product if we don't care about money. If we just give it away for free and we have no standards, that wouldn't work either. So in the world where the mission of the company is to create great product and get it in front of as many people as possible and help millions of people with their health, we have to do that with a business mind, with an understanding of the economics. And sometimes that means making tough decisions. In fact, it's not only that they don't go, you can't even say that they're distinct. In fact, they completely go hand in hand. If you don't have those two things hand in hand, you're going to run out of, this goes back to what I was saying earlier, which is all these people that I know that have started companies and some of those products were great products, but they didn't know how to build it into a business. And then everyone suffers. Even if the product is great, you can't sustain it because you didn't have a business model figured out. That stuff, it feeds into itself.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing. You're pointing to, there are a lot of underlying assumptions that we operate on that we're not even aware of.
Right.
I'll give you an example. I just wrote a column on Inc. about this recently. The phrase work-life balance.
Yep.
Think about that phrase.
Yep.
It's an inherently flawed phrase. Not because of the balance side, but because whenever you say work, life, anything, what you're suggesting is that there's a difference between work and life.
Which is not true.
Work is work, life is life. So if work is not life, then what is work? It's death. But there's an underlying assumption there that says there's living and then there's working, and it's patently false. I mean, obviously you are alive at work. Work is part of your life. And yes, you have to balance things. You have to balance your roles and your time and your relationships and all that, but you're not balancing work and life. It's all life, right? So the other assumption is that the idea of making a difference for people, giving value, changing the world, being personally fulfilled, and making money are somehow mutually exclusive, right? That in other words, in order to do one, you have to sacrifice the other. If you're going to change the world, you can't make money. If you're going to make money, you can't worry about making an impact. That's just bullshit.
Totally.
It's just something that we made up.
Totally.
That really the ideal is that we're doing all of those at the same time, which means that, yes, I want to make a difference, and yes, I want to make money. And not only is there no sin in that, it's an absolute necessity for all the reasons you just said. The sustainability, the viability of the company over time, but also all those people that work for you and their families depend on that. All of those. So this idea that we have to kind of justify it somehow and say, well, we're not. I mean, you said it yourself. It's not that we're money hungry capitalists. It's not about that. It's about doing all of it at the same time. And I think it's when we start to make those choices of, well, I have to sacrifice my morals and ethics in order to make money.
Well, thank you for that, Ethan, and thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Love is Just Damn Good Business podcast. I know I went off on a little bit of a rant at the end of that conversation, but I was really inspired, and I hope you take this away more than anything else. I was really inspired by the fact that he paid attention to the kind of culture that he was trying to create right from the very beginning, and this is a huge mistake that so many entrepreneurs, I'm going to even say most entrepreneurs make, is they don't even think about culture. They think it's got nothing to do with them, that that's something that you deal with later on down the road. But if you ignore the kind of culture you're trying to create right from the very inception of your company, you are ignoring that at your own peril, because that culture in large part is going to determine the way that you work. And if it's the right kind of culture, it's going to enable you to be successful. I know we get all caught up in the great products and the great service that we're providing and how we're going to change the world and make a gajillion dollars. And we should. That's what inspires us as entrepreneurs, if you happen to be an entrepreneur. And at the same time, it just doesn't happen on its own. So the dynamics that we create between people, if we can create an environment that people love working in, that our clients love doing business with, and that we love involving ourselves with every single day, we're going to have the best possible chance of success, whether we're starting a company from scratch or we're going to work at a corporation every day. Same dynamics. It's always true. We have to pay attention to it. It's the old use it or lose it kind of scenario, I suppose. So thank you once again for tuning in. This is your host, Steve Farber, reminding you to do what you love in the service of people who love what you do.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Love is Just Damn Good Business with Steve Farber. Join us again next time, because when customer and employee satisfaction just isn't enough anymore, we are here to back you up with specific ideas to operationalize love to make an enormous difference in your business, personal life, and the world around you. Visit our website at stevefarber.com to leave a review. And don't forget to share the love with your colleagues and friends, because after all, it's just damn good business.